Now, a warning for our viewers, this next story contains graphic descriptions.
Started in British Columbia last month, the so-called Brothers of the Force group now has over 700 members across the country.
The RCMP is voicing new concerns over what it calls inappropriate and disrespectful use of social media.
And what awaits inside is questionable at best. Crude cartoons, comments about genitalia and gender identity, exactly the image the RCMP is trying to wipe out. Later this year, the force will compensate thousands of female members who say they were sexually harassed on the job as part of a class action lawsuit. Access to the secret Facebook group is strictly controlled.
But CBC News has confirmed that the page's administrators ask anyone who wants to join to provide their official force regimental number.
So how do we know all this? Mangela Dufresne is part of the CBC News team that conducted the investigation. And Mangela, already this week, the RCMP was in the spotlight over Colton Boushey comments made about him and about that case on a private Facebook group. But what you looked into was a secret Facebook group. How do you even find out about it and then find out what they're saying on it?
You find out about it because you know people who know about it. We've covered the harassment in the RCMP for a very, very long time, since 2011, in fact. Because of the body of work, there are people who will call us and tell us about things that are going on. Not everything is, big enough to be reported, but this one seemed very worrisome to them, when we got access to some material that was on it, we found it that way too. It's secret, meaning that at first when we looked at it, it was closed. It wasn't secret. You could see that if you searched it, that there was such a group. But when you, after a few days, it just disappeared, and then we found out they had changed the status to secret, which means it doesn't even show up when you search for it. And that means you need to rely on sources who will give you information. We got screen grabs, basically, of the things that were on it. And then we could cross-reference information that was on it with real people who work for the force.
And when you talk about sources, that's something that I find particularly curious, because we hear about these kinds of allegations and you wonder, is the force really taking this seriously? Clearly there is someone there, a whistleblower, who is concerned about what they're seeing and is raising it with you. What does that say broadly?
There are several whistleblowers because they're upset that for all the effort, I mean, to be fair to the RCMP, they've put a lot of effort into trying to get the message out that this kind of behavior is unacceptable. But it doesn't seem to be working for some reason with a certain segment of the population. Now, you know, there are some men who've been very worried about what this stuff is as well, and have been sharing that with some of the women. There's a secret women's group that was started that has 2,500 members, quite a bit more than the men's one. But that was a support group that they felt they needed to have for to talk about harassment, to talk about issues of concern to them, and as part of the class settlement that's underway right now, just kind of women sharing information. And so the men kind of set this one up as a, well, if they can, why can't we? That's where the problem happens, because the administrators weren't restricting the kind of material they put on there. They were putting all sorts of crass, cartoony photos of women, really, I guess we would say juvenile kind of humor.
You give me an example of one of them.
One of them posted a painting of a police officer in full red serge getting oral sex from what looked like a burlesque dancer in a northern town. Then there were all these crass comments that followed. You know, it usually happens in the back of a police cruiser kind of comment. It just seems astonishing that with all the Me Too's, with the huge amount of discussion about harassment in the RCMP, about treating your colleagues right, why this would not strike someone as a bit odd. It's dark kind of humor.
I sort of am left wondering, with the RCMP, the national force, facing all of this pressure over many, many years, if this is a secret Facebook group, is it that the behavior is not going away, but that it's just going underground?
Well, I think they know what they're doing is not right, because they refer to don't let any officers on here because you don't want to get a code of conduct, which is basically being hauled on the carpet for doing something that they know is inappropriate. So the problem is that the culture has not evolved from the time when it was a male-only force, when it's a lot of stress on this job. They need to vent it, so they relied on humor. They relied on the camaraderie of their colleagues to get over it. Well, now they have to think about what they say, so they feel safe in what they think is a secret site. But nothing on social media is safe, and the RCMP itself, in its response to us, was quite upset and said they should remember that whatever they say in private it matters, because they represent the RCMP. It's the same as if they did it in public.
Some very important work you've been doing. Thank you very much, Manjula.
Thank you.